The storm had torn the world apart. Waves slammed against the jagged coast of Snow Vicente, like war drums played by a mad god. Thunder rolled over the sea, a snarling beast chasing the dying cries of a ship that once bore the name Santa Monica. Now, it was nothing more than driftwood and memory, and a single man crawling through the wreckage. He emerged from the surf like a corpse reborn, soaked, trembling and blind in one eye. His fingers clawed at the slick black stones as if digging his way out of the underworld. Rain pelted him like needles. Blood trailed from his lip, mingling with seawater. He coughed, spat, then collapsed on his back. Gasping Dot, the fisherman who found him, said he'd floated in on a broken beam, clinging to it as if it were the mast of heaven. They surrounded him in silence, eyes wide. They didn't touch him. Not yet. Because of the others, there had been 3 bodies tangled in the kelp just down the shore. Alive, somehow, but twisted. Their skin was too pale, their tongues gone, their eyes a bottomless, oily black. When touched, they hissed like snakes and clawed at the sand with inhuman strength until the tide took them. Only one survivor spoke, and he didn't speak much. With shaking hands, the man traced 2 words in the wet sand before passing out. Widow's teeth. Somewhere farther south, aboard the Milkbone ... double quotes, pull him up. The voice was low, female, and laced with smoke and salt. A thick rope groaned as the unconscious man was hoisted from the sea like a hooked shark. His body swung over the deck, limp and dripping. Crew members stood back as he landed with a dull thump, blood mixing with the rain-slicked wood. Captain Eileen McGraw crouched beside him. Her long coat was tattered at the bottom, boots mud-crusted, and her hair hung in red tangles beneath a tricorn hat peppered with tiny bones. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck. Still warm, still alive. Name? She asked. A crewman shrugged. Washed up with no papers. Found him clinging to a barrel marked Dutch East. The captain narrowed her eyes at the man. His chest bore the faded tattoo of a lion's head, one she hadn't seen in nearly 2 decades. The mark of the Van Dahl brothers. She stood. Get him below. Bind his wrists and keep a bucket nearby. If he starts screaming, gag him. The crew obeyed Dot as they dragged the man below deck. Eileen stayed behind, staring into the storm. Widow's teeth, she whispered. Damn it, Royce. What have you gotten yourself into now? Below deck was dim, wet, and filled with the stench of old rum, rot, and men who hadn't touched land in months. The lanterns swayed with the ship's rhythm, casting long, twitching shadows across the beams. Somewhere nearby, someone was vomiting. Somewhere else, someone laughing like a cracked bell. Royce Van Dahl came to with a jolt, choking on salt. He tried to sit up, but his wrists were bound with thick hemp rope, and every part of his body felt like it had been dashed against rocks. Which, to be fair, it had. He blinked, trying to remember Dot's storm. Wreckage. The bodies. His brother's voice, and then nothing. Easy now, came a voice, low and measured. A woman's. Familiar. Eileen. He turned his head toward her silhouette in the dark. She leaned against a crate, arms crossed, eyes hidden beneath the brim of her hat. You're not dead, she said. Disappointing in some ways, Royce groaned. Still charming, I see. You look like shit. Smell like it, too, he rasped. You always tie up your guests? Only the ones who used to steal ships borrowed, without permission. Royce tried to smile, but it cracked his lip open again. You tasted blood. Eileen stepped closer. Her face was lined now, her left eye cloudy, a faint scar cutting through the brow. But the fire in her gaze hadn't dimmed, nor had the quiet, dangerous calm she carried like a dagger behind her back. What were you doing near the teeth, Royce? She asked. His breath hitched. You know about them? Aye, we saw what washed up in Portugal. Half-drowned wretches with no tongues and black eyes. And you paddling through the storm like a dog chasing a ghost. Royce's mouth was dry. I wasn't chasing a ghost. She tilted her head. No? He looked away. I was chasing my brother. A long silence. Elias Van Dahl is supposed to be dead, Eileen finally said. Royce shook his head. Supposed to be? But he's not. I saw him, standing on the deck of a British brig, wearing captain's colors. He looked straight at me before the cannonballs hit. Then why are you still alive? I don't know. Another silence, this one heavier. Let me go, he said. Tell me what you were carrying. Nothing, just rumors. A monk in Cadiz gave me a scroll. Said it was a fragment from a journal. An inquisitor who once set foot on the teeth. Said the island swallows time. Said it talks. Said it watches. Eileen didn't flinch, but her jaw tightened. Royce went on. The monk slit his throat right after handing it to me. That explains the corpses with the eyes. No, that's something else. Thunder cracked again above them. The ship rocked harder. Somewhere in the hull the boards groaned. Too deep, too low. Eileen turned to leave, then paused. If you weren't lying there half dead, I'd toss you back to the sea. You still might, Royce said. She stopped in the doorway. Rest, you'll need it. For what? She looked back over her shoulder, shadows dancing across her scarred cheek. For whatever you brought with you. Above deck, the wind had changed. The clouds over the western horizon had begun to swirl, not with rain, but with something darker, unnatural. Sailcloth rippled like skin, and the gulls had vanished. The sea was still watching. Far below, tied to a beam, Royce slept, and in his dreams he heard whispers in a language no man had ever spoken aloud and survived. By morning, the sea had turned to glass. The crew of the Milkbone stood in silence as the sails flapped. Uselessly above them, there was no wind, not a single wave, just an endless sheet of black water, still and heavy as oil. Even the sun seemed hesitant to rise, casting only a dim, copper light that bled across the sky like a wound. Eileen stared at the horizon through her spyglass. Nothing. Not land, not ships, not birds. Just nothing. Then came the sound, a low thrum, like a drum underwater. It pulsed through the hull, through the boots of every sailor, into their bones. The youngest among them, a boy no older than 15, dropped a coil of rope and pressed his hands to his ears, eyes wide in panic. I heard it, he whispered. Something humming. Eileen lowered the glass. Her voice was calm, but her face said otherwise. Wake him. Down in the hold, Royce stirred before the crewman touched him. He was already sitting up, eyes wide open, sweat soaking his shirt. You heard it too, the sailor said. Royce didn't answer. He didn't need to. They gathered near the bow, 22 men and women hardened by years of piracy, murder, and starvation. But none of them had ever looked so unsure. Royce stood beside Eileen, still bandaged, one wrist unbound. The other remained tied, just in case that Eileen pointed ahead. There, she said Dot. At first, they saw nothing. Just a dark smudge against the already dim horizon. Dot. Then, slowly, the shape began to rise. Dot. It wasn't land. Not in any ordinary sense. It looked like a reef at first, sharp and angular. But it kept growing, lifting from the sea, as if being birthed by the ocean itself. Rocks jutted like fangs from a curved black mass, and for a breathless moment it did resemble teeth. Rows of them, the widow's teeth, Royce whispered. It's real. As the shape emerged fully, the crew gasped. A thin spire pierced the sky at its center, crooked and covered in moss, crowned with what looked like rusted bells or cages. The rocks below were etched with strange runes, barely visible beneath. The dripping salt. Dot, and there, just beneath the surface, flickered the outline of something enormous, circular, almost like an eye, slowly opening beneath the waves. Dot. No birds, no sound, no movement. Dot. Just the island, staring back. Eileen felt her throat tighten. Drop anchor, she ordered. But no landing. Not yet. The crew obeyed in silence. Dot. Royce leaned in. It's watching us. Let it watch, she muttered. We didn't come to knock. A moment passed. Then another dot, and then the bell on the spire rang. Once, twice. There was no wind. Dot. It rang by itself. They landed just after dusk. The rowboat scraped against the black sand like a coffin lid closing. 6 figures stepped out in silence, boots sinking into the gritty shore, torches hissing in the ocean wind. Behind them, the Milkbone drifted at anchor, a faint lantern glow marking her like a star already dying. Dot. Captain Eileen McGraw took the lead, her cutlass drawn but lowered. The wind smelled wrong, not of sea and salt, but of burned things, old parchment and ash. Her boots crunched on seashells, but when she looked down, she realized they weren't shells at all. They were teeth, human, dozens of them, scattered. Like sand. Dot. Behind her, Royce walked with a limp, still half mummified in bandages. He carried no weapon, only a small compass that didn't spin. It shuddered every time they faced inland. That alone was enough to make the others nervous. Quiet as a grave, muttered Bruno, one of Eileen's most brutal crewmen. Even the gulls won't come. Good, Eileen said. Means we're alone. Or not meant to be here, Royce added, eyes on the cliff ahead. The island was nothing like they'd imagined. No jungle, no green, just jagged obsidian cliffs and a narrow path carved into the rock, spiraling upward like a black spine. At its summit, the crooked spire they'd seen from sea. Now, up close, it looked more like a watchtower, and the cages at its top weren't empty. Something was inside them, swinging gently in the wind. They began to climb. Each step seemed to echo too loud. The island absorbed light strangely. Torches cast no clear shadows. Royce felt the air thicken as they ascended, as if they were walking into a giant invisible lung. Halfway up, they passed a stone slab, cracked but still standing. It bore writing, weathered and warped. All ye who seek her voice shall drown in their own tongue. No one spoke. Royce felt his throat dry. He touched the stone with his fingertips. It was warm. Not sun-warm, blood-warm. At the summit, the tower groaned in the wind, Dot, it was taller than they thought, built from stone unlike anything Eileen had ever seen. Bone white and veined like marble, but soft to the touch, like skin dried in the sun. The bells above did not ring. The cages, however, creaked and swung. They held figures, mummified monks, maybe, or sailors. Skin shriveled tight over bones, eyes rotted out, jaws hanging loose. But one of them, the lowest cage, held something worse. It moved. A flick of a hand, a twitch of the head. Its eyes were sewn shut, but it turned as if it could see them perfectly. Royce stepped back. "That's not dead." "I know," Eileen said, and then from far below came a scream high. Sharp, human. They turned toward the beach. Flames flickered on the Milkbone. A second scream, then the sound of glass shattering. Fire. Back to the boat. Eileen barked. But it was too late. From the cliff's edge, they saw the ship lurch sideways and then sink, pulled as if by an invisible hand. No storm, no waves, just a slow, dragging descent into black water, lanterns extinguishing one by one. Royce's breath caught. "They're gone," Bruno growled, reaching for his pistol. "What now?" Eileen clenched her jaw, eyes on the now dead. "See, we climb down, we find shelter, we stay alive. And the thing in the cage?" Royce asked. It had gone still. Eileen turned away. "Forget the cage," she muttered. "The island just made its move. They made camp in a hollow beneath. The cliffs, a natural bowl of stone, sheltered from the wind, but not from the island's gaze." Bruno lit a fire, but the flames fought against the air, guttering low and thin. No matter how much dry driftwood he fed them, smoke curled upward but didn't rise. It twisted sideways, sucked into the rocks. No one liked that. Eileen stood at the edge of the circle, arms crossed, staring into the dark with a gaze sharper than her cutlass. Royce sat near the fire, rubbing the heel of his hand into his temple, as if trying to push something out. "You hear it?" he asked suddenly. Bruno looked up. "Hear what?" Royce glanced at the cliffs. A sound behind the stone, like clicking. Eileen didn't answer, but she heard it too. It started after they left the tower, soft at first. A faint tick-tick like nails tapping against wood. Now it came and went, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Always close, always just out of sight. "Maybe crabs," muttered one of the younger crewmen. "Lorik, barely old enough to shave." "Crabs don't whisper," Royce replied, voice low. Lorik stiffened. "What do you mean?" Royce leaned in, his bandaged face lit orange by the weak fire. "I heard my name, just now, from the cliffs." Lorik turned pale. "You're lying." But no one laughed. Later, when the fire burned to embers and the wind dropped to a breath, Eileen dreamed. She was below the sea, but she could breathe. The world was green, endless, and silent. Around her drifted faces, pale, eyeless, smiling. One reached for her, mouth moving, sound less like. Then sound snapped into the dream. A voice, clear, cold. A woman's voice. She waits below. Her hands are open. Eileen jerked awake, heart pounding. Sweat rolled down her spine. Across the fire, Royce was already staring at her. "You heard it too," he said. At dawn, they'd buried the boy. Lorik had wandered during the night. They found him slumped beside the cliff path, body cold and stiff. hands pressed tight over his ears. No wounds, no signs of struggle, but his face was locked in a smile so wide it had torn both corners of his mouth. They buried him with his pistol and said nothing. No one mentioned the fact that his lips had been covered in black ash. No one asked where it came from. By midday, resumed the climb. This time Royce walked slower. He kept one hand on the rock face at all times, as if to make sure it was real. The compass in his coat beat like a pulse. Sometimes it ticked. Sometimes it hummed. Sometimes it went silent altogether. The path narrowed, spiraling toward a new outcropping, a jagged archway carved into the cliffside. Symbols lined the stone, new ones, wet, freshly carved. Bruno ran a finger through one of them. Still bleeding. Well, he muttered. Don't touch them, Eileen snapped. They weren't here yesterday. Royce stepped forward. This is where it begins. Where what begins? She asked. He looked at her, face pale. I don't know. They passed under. The arch. Inside was a tunnel, not natural, not man-made. The walls were curved, smooth, ribbed like the inside of a throat. It sloped downward, deeper into the island's body. The clicking returned, louder now, close, coming from every direction at once. Royce's breath quickened. Something was ahead. Not a person, not even a creature. A presence. It wasn't waiting. It was watching them arrive. The moment they stepped into the tunnel, the world outside seemed to vanish. No breeze from the sea. No distant cries of gulls. Only the dull thudding of their own hearts and the faint, persistent clicking, like an army of tiny claws skittering, unseen across stone. The air was thick, humid, and heavy with a strange scent, metallic, like old blood mixed with salt and earth. It clung to their clothes, their skin, settling deep in their lungs with every breath. Eileen held her cutlass ready, torch in the other hand, her eyes piercing the shadows that stretched endlessly ahead. Behind her, the crew followed in tight formation. Even Bruno's usual gruffness was replaced by an uneasy silence. Royce's fingers trembled as he adjusted the bandages around his wrist. The compass nestled deep in his coat pocket throbbed like a heartbeat, its needle spinning erratically, as if the island itself were tugging at it. Stay close, Eileen whispered, her voice echoing faintly in the narrow tunnel. We don't know what waits in the dark. Minutes turned into hours as they wound deeper beneath the island's flesh. The walls, slick and black as obsidian, seemed to pulse faintly beneath their fingertips, alive with some unknowable rhythm. Royce found himself tracing strange patterns etched into the stone, swirling glyphs that twisted and shimmered when caught in the torchlight. Loric's death hung over them like a shadow, unspoken but felt by all. A sudden whisper brushed past Royce's ear, soft as a lover's sigh. Royce, he spun, heart hammering, but saw nothing but the empty tunnel behind. Who's there? He called. Voice hoarse. No answer. Only the clicking. His hands clenched into fists. The island was playing with him, testing him. As they approached. A cavern, the space opened wide, the ceiling arching high above, dripping with bioluminescent moss that cast an eerie, shifting light. In the center stood a pedestal carved from bone-white stone, cracked and worn. Atop it rested a small wooden box bound in rusted iron bands. Royce was drawn forward, the compass screaming in his pocket. He reached out, trembling, fingers brushing the box's rough surface. A voice whispered, soft, melodic, almost hypnotic. "Open." Eileen grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with warning. "Don't," she hissed. "It's a trap." But the pull was too strong. Royce's fingers pressed the iron latch dot with a sharp snap. The lock gave way. Inside lay a jagged black tooth, pulsing faintly with a red glow, as if alive. The compass flared, emitting a piercing hum. The cavern shook violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The glowing moss flickered wildly. Eileen shouted, "Run!" They fled through the twisting tunnels as rocks crashed behind them like thunder. Once outside, the group was shaken. Bruno cursed under his breath. "This island's alive, and it hates us." Royce clutched the tooth tightly, feeling its heat seep into his bones. Eileen stared at the island's jagged silhouette against the darkening sky. "We need to find shelter," she said grimly, "before it decides to take more." That night, Royce dreamed of the island's voice, a siren song weaving through shadows, promising power, vengeance, and escape. But in the cold dawn, the crew found another crew member missing. Dawn was a bruised purple sky. The fire was nearly dead when Royce woke to a hollow silence. The usual clamor of the crew was missing. The smell of smoke hung faint in the air, mingling with the sharp tang of salt and something fouler decay. He pushed himself up, the tooth warm in his palm. The compass needle spun wildly, pointing toward the dark forest beyond the beach. "Where? Is everyone?" Royce muttered. He stumbled toward the edge of the camp. Heart pounding. There, at the base of a twisted mangrove, lay the body of Jorn, one of the ship's strongest fighters. His eyes were wide open, glassy, staring up at the sky. His mouth was torn into a grotesque grin. The edges of his lips sliced deeply, as if cut with a razor. Blood had soaked the sand beneath him. Blackened and dry. Eileen was already there, kneeling beside the corpse, her face pale but composed. "They're taking us apart," she whispered. Royce knelt beside her, eyes darting toward the shadows of the mangrove. "We need to move," he said, voice rough, "before the island decides who next." A soft, haunting melody drifted from the trees, a lullaby carried on the wind, both beautiful and terrifying. Royce's skin prickled. The island was alive, and it sang for them. As they packed their meager belongings, the crew's nerves frayed. Whispers and half-seen shapes haunted every glance. Lorik's fate weighed heavily on them all, a grim reminder of what awaited the careless. Bruno scowled, gripping his pistol tightly. "This place is a beast," he growled, "and it's hungry." Eileen cast a glance at Royce, her scarred face shadowed by the morning light. "We don't know what it wants," she said, "but we need to find out." Royce held the black tooth tightly, feeling it pulse in time with his heartbeat. The island had marked him, and he was no longer sure if he was the hunter or the prey. The morning light broke weakly through the heavy canopy of clouds, casting the island in a dull, gray pallor that seemed to seep into the very bones of the crew. Sleep had been scarce, disturbed by whispers carried on the wind and the creeping dread that clung to their skin like damp cloth. No one spoke much, but the tension was thick enough to slice through. Eileen stood apart from the others, her gaze scanning the ragged line of men and women who had followed her across the waves, now staring back at her with eyes clouded by exhaustion and fear. The scars of sea battles and past betrayals marked their faces, but this was something different, a gnawing unease that no sword could parry. "Gather round," she called, her voice sharp, cutting through the silence like a blade. The crew shuffled forward, wary but obedient. Royce remained silent at first, standing beside her but distant, the black tooth hidden beneath his coat and the erratic compass heavy in his pocket. He felt its pulse quicken with every heartbeat, a strange rhythm that seemed to echo the island's own breathing. Eileen's eyes met his for a brief moment, a silent exchange heavy with unspoken truths. Then she turned to face the crew. "We've lost men," she said plainly. "Jorn's death is on all our minds. Fear makes ghosts of us all. But if we fall apart now, this island will pick us clean." Murmurs rippled through the group. Bruno, his bulk silhouetted against the dim sky, stepped forward, his voice low and harsh. "The island's poison," he growled. "It's in the air, in the water, and it's got you carrying that cursed thing." All eyes snapped to Royce, who clenched his fists. The black tooth burned beneath her shirt like a living thing, and the compass in his pocket buzzed loudly. "I'm no curse," he said quietly, though his voice lacked conviction. "That tooth, it's part of the island's secret. I'm trying to understand it." Bruno spat on the ground. "Secrets bring death." Eileen raised a hand. "Enough. This bickering will get us nowhere. We either stand together or fall apart." "But—" The words felt hollow, even to her. The crew lingered, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on each soul, like the heavy fog that never seemed to lift from the island's shores. Royce felt their eyes on him, some curious, some accusing, and others filled with a quiet despair that unsettled even the hardened. Men among them. He glanced down at the black tooth resting against his chest beneath his shirt, feeling its subtle warmth, a pulse that seemed to thrum in time with the island itself. The compass in his pocket spun erratically, as if alive, tugging him towards an unseen force deep within the island's heart. Bruno stepped closer, his face inches from Royce's. "You're changing. I see it in your eyes. That thing's not just a relic. It's a chain, and it's binding you tighter with every passing hour." Royce swallowed hard, tasting blood from a cracked lip. "Maybe, but I'd rather be bound by knowledge than by fear." "Knowledge?" Bruno laughed bitterly. "You call this knowledge? A tooth that whispers lies in the dark?" Eileen moved swiftly between them. "Back off, Bruno. We're all on edge, but we need focus." The tension was a living thing, coiling and tightening like a serpent ready to strike. Royce felt the walls of the encampment closing in, every shadow stretching longer, every whisper growing louder. The island was watching, listening, and it was hungry. Later, Royce found himself walking along the jagged shore, the black tooth clenched in his hand. The compass pointed inland, pulsing with urgent insistence. The crashing waves echoed in his ears, but beneath them he thought he heard a softer sound of voice, low and melodic, threading through the wind. "Come closer," it seemed to say. He hesitated, memories flickering behind his eyes. The brother who betrayed him, the galleon sinking beneath storm-tossed waves, the whispering scroll from the monk, and the strange warmth of the tooth. The island was calling him deeper. As twilight fell, the camp grew restless. The crew huddled around flickering fires, sharing whispered stories and nervous laughter that barely masked their fear. Eyes darted toward the dense forest, where shadows moved in unnatural ways. Eileen sat beside Royce, her scarred hand resting lightly on his arm. "You feel it too, don't you?" He nodded. "It's like the island's alive, like it knows us." "More than that," she said softly. "It's old, older than any curse or legend. It's a force, and it doesn't forget." A sudden scream shattered the fragile calm. From the darkness emerged Lorik's younger brother, wild-eyed and trembling. "They're coming," he gasped. "Something's in the trees." Chaos erupted. Men grabbed weapons, torches flared, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a sinister rhythm. Royce tightened his grip on the tooth, feeling a surge of cold fear and fierce resolve. The island had begun to fight back. The forest seemed to close in around them, branches twisting like grasping, fingers casting long, dark shadows that danced under the flickering torchlight. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, mingled with something else, faintly sweet, like rotting fruit, and utterly unnatural. Eileen barked orders, her voice sharp as steel. "Form a circle. Keep your torches high." "No one goes alone." Royce moved beside her, heart pounding as the compass in his pocket spun wildly, the needle jerking toward the thickest part of the woods. The black tooth in his palm grew warmer, pulsing like a second heartbeat. From the trees came whispers, voices without bodies, calling names, promising secrets, offering escape. A scream shattered the night. Bruno charged toward the sound, cutlass raised, but the shadows swallowed him whole. For a moment, silence. Then Bruno's scream, raw, terrified, fading fast. The crew hesitated, terror gripping their souls like cold chains. Royce gritted his teeth. "We can't leave him." Eileen's eyes burned with fierce determination. "We find him, together." They plunged into the darkness. Inside the forest, the world was alien and twisted. The trees bent unnaturally, their bark slick and blackened. The ground squished beneath their boots, soft and cold, like walking on the island's own flesh. Whispers grew louder, circling around them, teasing, mocking. Royce stumbled, clutching the tooth, visions flashing before his eyes, his brothers. Betrayal, the cursed scroll, the drowned men with black eyes. A cold hand seemed to brush his mind, chilling and invasive. He gasped and stumbled forward, catching himself on a gnarled root. Ahead, faint torchlight flickered. They found Bruno slumped against a tree, eyes wild, chest heaving. His cutlass lay broken nearby. "What happened?" Eileen demanded. Bruno shook his head, voice ragged. "I heard her voice. The islands, it promised me freedom, power. But when I reached out, the shadows, they took me." Eileen grabbed his shoulder. "You're alive. That's what matters." Bruno nodded, but his eyes held a new fear, one deeper than any wound. They returned to camp, shaken but alive. Yet the island's grip tightened. That night, Royce dreamed again. The voice came clearer this time. "You carry the key, the tooth, but the cost is yours alone." He woke with a start, sweat chilling his skin. The island was awakening, and so was the darkness within them all. The dawn broke slow and heavy over the island. A dim gray light filtered through a thick veil of fog that clung to the jagged cliffs like a ghostly shroud. The sea beyond was a restless mirror, its surface roiling faintly as if uneasy about the day ahead. The crew of the Milkbone moved with weary resolve, each step sinking softly into the wet, black sand that stained their boots. Eileen gathered them near the remnants of their last fire, the smoke still curling weakly in the moist air. Her face was drawn and stern, eyes scanning each weathered, exhausted face with the weight of command. "We've lost too many already," she said, voice low but steady. "The island is no ordinary place. It's a living thing. It hunts. Use plays with us like prey. We can't run anymore. We must find its heart, the source of its power, and end this." Royce stood beside her, the black tooth tucked deep beneath his shirt, warm against his skin like a pulse. The compass in his pocket vibrated faintly, its needle twitching erratically, tugging him toward the twisted spire that loomed above them like a crook, broken finger pointing accusingly at the sky. "I've followed its call," Royce said. Quietly, "There's a cavern beneath the spire. That's where the island's voice comes from." Murmurs rippled through the crew. Fear, hope, and doubt tangled together in uneasy harmony. "Then that's where we go," Eileen said her voice firm. The climb to the spire was a brutal ascent. The path wound sharply upward, slick with moss and the residue of sea spray. Each step felt like wading through water, heavy and slow, as if the island resisted their intrusion. Wind howled through the jagged rocks shaped like rows of teeth, carrying faint echoes of voices long forgotten. Royce's compass pulled fiercely, as if his very soul was tethered to the place. The black tooth burned faintly beneath his shirt, a slow, steady heat that seemed to grow with every heartbeat. Dot at the summit. The twisted door of the spire yawned open before them, carved from ancient stone streaked with veins of deep crimson that glowed faintly like blood in the gloom. Arcane runes pulsed softly along its edges, and the air vibrated with unspoken menace. Eileen signaled the crew forward, torches held high, weapons ready. One by one, they stepped inside the dark maw. Inside the spire, the world shifted. Walls shimmered with a wet, oily sheen that seemed to absorb the torchlight rather than reflect it. Strange symbols writhed across the surfaces, serpentine lines twisting and twisting again, impossible shapes that made eyes ache when stared at too long. The air was thick and heavy, laced with the scent of salt and iron and something darker, decay and old sorrow. Royce's pulse quickened as the compass in his pocket screamed with wild intensity, its needle spinning out of control. The black tooth pulsed in his palm, a heartbeat matching the throb in the walls around them. A haunting melody drifted through the cavern, a voice singing in a language forgotten by time, low and lilting, weaving through the air like smoke. Crew advanced slowly, nerves taut as BOWSTRINGS. Suddenly, the ground trembled violently beneath their feet. A fissure cracked open behind them, swallowing the rear of their group into darkness with a chorus of screams. Eileen barely caught Royce's arm, pulling him back as stones cascaded around them. They tumbled into a lower chamber bathed in a sickly red glow that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. In the center of the chamber lay a pool of black water, perfectly still, but alive with shifting ripples that moved against the currents of air. Above it hovered a shimmering figure, a woman draped in seaweed and bones, her eyes twin abysses that seemed to see beyond flesh and time. "The heart of the island," Royce whispered. The woman's voice echoed inside their minds, soothing, terrifying, a lullaby and a curse entwined. "You seek answers, but every secret demands a price." Eileen stepped forward, blade gleaming. "We want to leave alive." The figure smiled, a thin curl of lips sharp as blades. "Leave? None leave without offering." The pool churned, revealing visions, betrayal, sacrifice, madness, and the endless hunger of the island. Royce felt the black tooth burn hotter, warning him. Suddenly, shadows twisted into grotesque forms, creatures born of water and stone, their eyes glowing with unholy light. The fight erupted. Steel met claw, torches flared, and screams echoed in the cavern's dark womb. Royce faced one beast, heart-pounding. The black tooth flared in his hand. With a roar, he drove it deep into the creature's chest. It shattered, dissolving into mist. When silence fell, the woman's voice whispered once more, "The island remembers. The island waits." Eileen looked at Royce, grim. "This isn't over." Royce nodded, feeling the crushing weight of the tooth, and the darkness it carried. The island's heart beat on, and so did the shadows within them all. The island's dawn was a pale, reluctant light barely filtering through the dense canopy above. The crew of the Milkbone moved in subdued silence, shadows among the twisted roots and moss-covered stones, each step careful and deliberate. The Sioux, heavy stillness pressed down on them all, as though the island itself was holding its breath, watching, waiting. Eileen walked near the front, her eyes sharp, scanning the forest around them with a warrior's vigilance. Her hand rested lightly on the hilt of her cutlass, a small comfort against the creeping dread that clung to their bones. The loss of their comrades weighed heavily, the memory of Joran's grotesque smile, Bruno's terror, and the relentless whispering of the island echoing in their minds. Royce trailed behind, the black tooth wrapped tightly in a piece of cloth. At his side, the compass lay silent in his pocket now, but the unease it stirred within him was louder than ever. Every breath felt thick and tainted, as if the very air carried a poison meant for the soul. The crew's faces were drawn and pale, eyes darting nervously between the shadowed trees. They spoke in hushed tones, whispers of fear and doubt tangled with desperate hope. Trust had become a fragile thread, strained almost to breaking by the island's unseen hand. Bruno broke the silence at last, his voice low and bitter. "I don't know how much longer any of us can take this. The island's poison is crawling in my blood, and that cursed tooth." He spat on the ground. "It's more than a thing, it's a shackle." Royce met his gaze steadily. "It's our only clue. If we don't understand it, we'll never escape." A murmur ran through the group. Some nodded in reluctant agreement. Others averted their eyes. Lorik's younger brother shuffled forward, his hands trembling. "Last night I heard the voice again. And I heard the voice again. Not just whispers, words, calling my name, saying things I shouldn't hear." Eileen's jaw clenched tightly. "The island wants to divide us, to make us doubt each other. We cannot let it." The forest seemed to close in around them, the ancient trees towering like silent sentinels, their twisted branches reaching out like fingers to snatch at the unwary. The scent of damp earth mixed with a faint sweetness, like decaying flowers long forgotten, and the wind carried a haunting melody, soft, beckoning, and laced with menace. Royce swallowed hard, feeling the black tooth pulse faintly against his palm as though alive. The melody wound through his thoughts, stirring memories he wished to forget, the betrayal by his brother, The drowned men with empty eyes, the cursed scroll that started it all. A sudden rustle from the undergrowth snapped him back to the present. His hand went instinctively to his dagger. "Stay alert," Eileen warned, her voice low and steady. "The island watches, and it's growing impatient." The crew tightened their formation, eyes scanning the shadows. Minutes passed, heavy and tense. Then, from deeper in the forest, a voice, a woman's, rose, clear and chilling. "Come to me." The words echoed, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Royce felt a shiver run down his spine. The island was calling again. The voice lingered in the air like a ghost's breath, its haunting melody weaving through the trees and settling deep into the marrow of their bones. It was beautiful and terrible all at once, a siren's call wrapped in shadow, beckoning them closer to a fate they barely understood. Royce's heart pounded. The black tooth burned faintly in his palm, a slow, steady pulse that seemed to match the rhythm of the island itself. He swallowed hard, fighting the urge to follow the voice deeper into the woods. Eileen tightened her grip on her cutlass, her eyes scanning the dense foliage with unwavering focus. "Don't listen," she warned. "It's a trap. The island wants to break us." Bruno scoffed, though even he looked uneasy. "Trap or not, we're running out of choices." The crew hesitated, torn between fear and desperation. As the sun dipped lower, shadows grew longer and darker. The trees seemed to lean in closer, their twisted limbs clawing at the sky like desperate hands reaching for salvation. The eerie melody shifted, becoming a chorus of whispered promises: power, freedom, revenge. Lorik's younger brother suddenly gasped, clutching his head. "It's in my mind," the voice. "It's saying things I shouldn't know." Royce stepped beside him, offering a steadying hand. "We have to hold on to each other. The island feeds on fear and division." But the boy's eyes were glazed, lost in some unseen torment. Night fell like a shroud around the campfire. The crew sat in uneasy silence. The flames flickered, casting dancing shadows that twisted into strange, unnatural shapes. Royce stared into the fire, the black tooth warm against his skin. Memories surged unbidden. The brother who betrayed him, the galleon sinking beneath storm-tossed waves, the cursed scroll. The island's voice whispered again, threading through his dreams like poison. Suddenly, a scream ripped through the darkness. The crew sprang to their feet, weapons drawn. A figure stumbled from the shadows, one of their own, eyes wild with terror, skin pale and slick with sweat. "They're coming," she gasped. The shadows, they watch, they hunger. Chaos erupted. Men shouted, torches flared, steel clashed with unseen foes. The forest around them seemed to pulse and breathe, alive with dark intent. Royce gritted his teeth, gripping the black tooth tightly. The compass in his pocket spun wildly, its needle pointing toward the heart of the island, and whatever fate awaited them there. Dawn broke over the island like a pale wound, bleeding weak light through the dense canopy above. The air was thick and still, heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, as if the forest itself exhaled a slow, weary breath, tired of secrets and silence. The crew of the Milkbone moved forward in cautious procession, each footfall muffled by the thick carpet of moss and fallen branches beneath their boots. Faces were drawn and pale, eyes wary and haunted, their souls stretched, thin by days of terror and loss. The island's invisible grip tightened with every step. Eileen led the way, her silhouette sharp against the shifting gloom. Her scarred hands gripped the worn leather hilt of her cutlass, knuckles white with tension. Each movement was precise and deliberate, the measured calm of a commander desperate to hold her crew together against the mounting darkness. Dot, behind her, Royce walked silently, burdened by the black tooth carefully wrapped at his side. The object pulsed faintly with a steady warmth that beat like a hidden heart beneath his skin. Memories churned in his mind, the brother who betrayed him, the cursed scroll whispering forbidden knowledge, the galleon lost beneath storm-tossed waves. The island's voice haunted the edges of his thoughts, a siren song promising answers, yet threatening to unravel his sanity. Silence reigned, broken only by the rustle of leaves and occasional creak of gnarled branches swaying in an unseen breeze. Lorik's younger brother shivered beside Bruno, eyes flicking nervously into the encroaching shadows. Suddenly, Eileen halted, raising a hand to signal the others to stop. "We need to decide our next move," she said, voice low but steady. "Staying here will mean death. The island feeds on our fear. If we don't push deeper, find the source of this evil, none of us will survive." Bruno spat on the ground, his face hard and grim. "Deeper means facing nightmares none of us can imagine." Royce glanced down at the black tooth, tracing its jagged edges with a finger. The compass in his pocket stirred, its needle twitching erratically toward an unseen point. A faint melody drifted on the breeze, low and mournful, woven with threads of beauty and despair. The island was calling again. Around them the trees seemed alive, their twisted limbs curling skyward like serpents reaching out to grasp one another, weaving an almost impenetrable wall. Roots surged from the earth, twisting and intertwining beneath a carpet of rotting leaves like old wounds that refused to heal. Dot, each step was a struggle. An overwhelming sense of inevitability squeezed their chests, as if the island, a primeval predator, had already sunk its claws into their very souls. Eileen turned to the gathered crew. "We are the last who remain. If we do not find the island's heart, it will find us." She spoke not only as a captain, but with a deep, inexorable resolve forged in the fire of loss and betrayal. Bruno, usually gruff and blunt, appeared unusually pensive. "I'm afraid, but fear is what keeps us alive. Lose that, and what's left?" Lorik's younger brother quietly sobbed, hiding his face in his hands. "I hear the voice, Dot, it calls to me, and it promises peace." Royce stepped forward, placing a steadying hand on the boy's shoulder. "We must hold together. Our bonds are the only shield against the island's influence." A faint sunbeam pierced the canopy, lighting a path ahead, but with every passing moment, the surrounding darkness seemed to deepen. A distant sound reached, their ears soft and barely perceptible, like the flutter of wings. Everyone froze. Eileen's hand tightened around her sword's hilt as she strained to listen. "That's no mere wind." Royce inhaled deeply, skin prickling. "The island is watching." The silence pressed heavy around them, as if the earth itself prepared to reveal its secrets or its snares. Hours slipped by, heavy with dread and anticipation. Every glance was fixed forward, into the unknown depths where salvation or doom waited. The forest around them seemed to grow denser, the shadows thicker, as if the very trees leaned inward, whispering secrets they dared not share aloud. The low melody, once distant, now swirled through the air like a living thing, seductive and sinister. It tugged at their thoughts, threading through memories and fears, weaving a web of doubt and longing. Eileen's eyes narrowed. Stay close, don't let the island pick us apart. Royce felt the black tooth burn faintly beneath his shirt, a slow, persistent heat that echoed the rhythm of his pounding heart. The compass in his pocket pulsed erratically, as if warning him of an unseen danger. He tried to steady his breath, but the whispers clawed at his mind. Ahead, the path narrowed and twisted sharply between ancient roots, leading toward a hollow where the air grew thick with a strange, sweet scent, like the bloom of flowers long dead. Bruno muttered under his breath, "It smells like rot and lies." Lorik's younger brother stumbled, his eyes glazed and unfocused. Royce caught him before he fell. "You're not alone," Royce said firmly, meeting his gaze. "Fight it. Fight the voice." The boy swallowed, shivering, but nodded. Suddenly, a rustling erupted nearby. Torches flared as the crew turned weapons toward the sound, tense and ready. From the underbrush stepped a figure, a woman, her clothes tattered, eyes wide and haunted. She trembled as she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "They come with the night," she said. "Shadows that hunger, that take what little hope we have." Eileen lowered her sword slightly. "Who are you?" "I'm no one," the woman replied. "Just a lost soul, but the island, it doesn't let us go." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The woman's presence was a living warning. Royce's fingers curled tightly around the black tooth. The compass spun wildly, needle darting toward a dark thicket ahead. Eileen's jaw tightened. "We're close. Whatever waits for us is near." The island song rose louder, a chorus of whispers and sighs that wrapped around them like chains. Royce felt the weight of destiny settle heavier on his shoulders. The island's secrets were within reach, but so was the edge of madness. As twilight bled into night, the crew pressed onward into the heart of the forest, where forgotten memories and darker truths awaited. Night had fallen like a heavy, suffocating cloak over the island, smothering the thick forest in near complete darkness. The only sources of light were the flickering torches held tightly by the crew of the Milkbone, their flames wavering in the damp, stagnant air. The flames cast monstrous, dancing shadows that writhed against the ancient trunks and tangled underbrush, making the very forest seem alive with secret, unseen horrors. The dampness in the air was almost palpable, mingling the smell of wet earth, moss, and the faint but unmistakable tang of salt and decay. It was as if the island itself exhaled a slow, mournful breath, a sigh weighted with centuries of sorrow and malevolence. The silence between the creaks of branches and the crunch of leaves beneath boots pressed upon them, heavy and almost deafening. Royce walked near the front of the line, feeling the black tooth snug in its worn leather pouch tied securely at his side. It gave off a faint, steady warmth that pulsed gently against his hip, a heartbeat against the creeping cold. His hand rested near it as if seeking strength, but his mind was a whirlwind of unrest. The compass in his pocket, which had once spun wildly in frantic disarray, now pointed steadily forward, almost imperceptibly vibrating. as though it sensed the approaching heart of the island. Eileen moved with practiced caution, her every step precise, her eyes sharp and unyielding as she scanned the dense forest ahead. The lines of worry and determination etched deeply into her face spoke of countless battles fought, not just with blades, but with dread, despair, and the weight of command. "We're close," Eileen whispered, her voice low but firm. "The trees will thin soon. The air, it's changing. I can taste salt and something sharp, metallic. Whatever's ahead, it's no ordinary place." Behind her, Bruno spat on the ground, the usual roughness in his tone mixed with a hint of unease. "Feels like we're walking into a trap, the kind you don't escape from." Lorik's younger brother trailed near Royce, clutching his arm as if it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. His wide eyes reflected the flickering torchlight, shadowed with fear. "The voice, it calls to me again, louder than before, like a chorus in my head." Royce swallowed hard, fighting the surge of fear that threatened to engulf him. "We have to be ready. Whatever waits in this darkness, it watches us." As they pressed onward, the oppressive forest began to thin. The suffocating canopy gave way to a clearing, bathed in cold, spectral moonlight. The pale glow revealed an ancient stone altar standing at the center, massive and weathered by time, its surface etched with complex runes that pulsed faintly with a chilling blue light, as if breathing with the island's own dark soul. Surrounding the altar lay a grisly testament to the island's merciless claim. Bones, some unmistakably human, others twisted and malformed beyond recognition, half buried in the soil like forgotten relics of a macabre sacrificial ground. Some bore marks of violence, others were cracked as if crushed by great weight. The air was thick with an almost tangible dread. The island's heart beat here. Eileen signaled sharply, her voice commanding despite the exhaustion etched in her every move. "Set up camp. Keep watch. We rest but stay alert. None of us can afford to let our guard down." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, pitching their small tents and arranging torches in a loose perimeter around the altar. Despite their weariness, every pair of eyes scanned the darkness beyond the clearing, wary of what might emerge from the shadows. Royce couldn't tear his gaze away from the altar. The black tooth in his pouch pulsed in time with the glowing runes, the faint that filled the clearing resonating deep within his bones. The island was awakening memories long buried, stirring ancient magics older than the sea itself. The whispering voice, once distant and elusive, now threaded through the night air like a growing storm, a low chant, a song woven with promises of power and doom. Royce's breath caught as he realized the island was no longer simply a place. They were in its grasp, and it was in theirs. The night stretched on, heavy and unyielding. The crew huddled close to their fire, the flames barely keeping the cold and the shadows at bay. Eyes flickered to the forest edges where the darkness seemed to pulse and shift. Waiting. Eileen stood watch near the altar, her expression unreadable. As she traced a finger over the ancient runes, murmuring words in a language long forgotten, Royce stepped closer, compelled by an unseen force. "What is it saying?" he asked quietly. She looked up, eyes burning with fierce resolve. "It speaks of sacrifice, of those who gave their lives to the island's hunger. and of a price yet to be paid. A chill ran down Royce's spine. The island was not done with them. The night pressed down on the clearing like a living weight, the glow from the altar's runes casting an eerie, spectral light that made the surrounding trees appear as twisted sentinels watching their every move. The bones scattered about seemed to absorb the light, their jagged shapes twisting into grotesque shadows that flickered and danced in the torchlight. Royce stood close to the altar, the black tooth pulsing rhythmically beneath his shirt, sinking. With the heartbeat of the island itself, his fingers brushed the worn leather pouch, as if seeking answers hidden within its dark depths. The compass in his pocket thrummed faintly, its needle pointing unerringly into the shadowed forest beyond. A cold wind stirred suddenly, sweeping through the clearing and carrying with it a chorus of distant whispers, fragments of a song ancient and broken, echoing through the trees. The melody was both beautiful and sinister, weaving a tapestry of longing and dread that gripped their hearts. Eileen's voice cut through the murmuring night. "We don't know what lies beyond this clearing, but whatever it is, it waits, and it's hungry." Bruno stepped forward, jaw clenched tight. "We've come too far to turn back now. The island's secrets are within our grasp, but so is our doom." Lorik's younger brother trembled beside Royce, eyes wide and haunted. "The voice, it's inside me now. I can't tell if it's mine or the island's." Royce placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. "Hold on to who you are. Don't let the island take that from you." Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. The crew tensed, hands tightening on weapons as the darkness seemed to shift and writhe. From the forest's edge emerged figures, ghostly silhouettes, clad in tattered, sea-worn garments, their eyes hollow and glowing faintly with an unnatural light. They moved silently, their presence a chilling reminder of those claimed by the island's curse. Eileen raised her cutlass, voice steady but fierce. "Stand ready. They're not the living, but they're deadly all the same." The figures advanced, encircling the camp with eerie grace. The torches flickered violently as a cold mist seeped from the forest floor, curling around their ankles like spectral serpents. Royce gritted his teeth, feeling the black tooth burn hot against his skin. The compass spun wildly, the needle erratic, as if warning of the chaos to come. Steel clashed against ethereal forms as the crew fought desperately, each strike meeting resistance as if cutting through smoke. The ghostly attackers seemed to phase through solid matter, their movements swift and unpredictable. Amid the chaos, Royce locked eyes with one figure, a woman whose gaze held a flicker of something lost and human beneath the haunting glow. In that instant, a flood of memories crashed over him, faces forgotten, promises broken, and a past intertwined with the island's dark magic. The woman's voice echoed inside his mind, soft yet commanding. The island's heart beats in. "Your blood. The price is not yet paid." Royce staggered but steadied himself, gripping the black tooth tighter. The fight raged on, but in that moment he understood this was more than a battle for survival. It was a struggle for their very souls. As dawn's first light began to pierce the gloom, the spectral attackers faded into the mists, leaving behind silence heavy with loss and unanswered questions. Eileen gathered the weary crew, her gaze hard and resolute. "We've survived the night, but the island's grip tightens. Tomorrow we face the heart itself. Royce looked toward the dark woods, the black tooth burning fiercely now, a beacon of both hope and curse. The journey was far from over. The morning sun broke hesitantly over the horizon, casting pale golden light through the thinning canopy of the ancient forest. The air was crisp yet heavy with the scent of damp earth and salt carried on a distant breeze. Despite the fragile light, the island's dark presence lingered like a shadow beneath the brightness, a silent threat never far from the crew's thoughts. The survivors of the Milkbone gathered their belongings in the clearing around the ancient stone altar. Their bodies were battered, spirits frayed, but their eyes held a burning determination, a shared resolve to confront the island's heart and the secrets that guarded. Eileen stood before them, her posture rigid, the weight of command etched deeply in the lines of her face. "Today we go deeper than ever before," she announced. "We will face whatever lies beneath the surface, and we will find the truth." Royce adjusted the leather pouch at his side, feeling the familiar warmth of the black tooth within. The compass in his pocket pointed steadily forward, unwavering now as if guided by some unseen force. His mind churned with questions and doubts, but also a fierce resolve. Whatever awaited them, he would meet it head on. The forest ahead was quieter now, the oppressive sounds of the night giving way to an eerie stillness. Sunlight filtered unevenly through the branches, illuminating patches of moss-covered stones and tangled roots that seemed to twist like grasping hands. As they ventured forth, the path grew steeper and narrower, winding upward toward the island's summit. The air grew cooler and thinner, carrying whispers that seemed to echo from the very earth beneath their feet. Bruno, ever the skeptic, broke the silence with a bitter laugh. "You'd think after all this we'd be used to the island's tricks. But no, it keeps pulling us deeper." Lorik's younger brother stayed close to Royce, his eyes wary yet curious. "Do you think we'll survive? Will the island let us leave?" Royce looked down at the boy, a flicker of warmth breaking through the cold tension. "If we stick together, and if we trust what little we understand, maybe we will." The path ended at a sheer cliff's edge, revealing a vast cavern mouth, yawning beneath the summit. From within, a faint blue light pulsed, casting ghostly reflections on the rocky walls. The black tooth pulsed in Royce's hand, matching the eerie glow. Eileen turned to the crew. "This is it, the island's heart. Beyond this entrance lies everything we've sought and everything we fear." The crew exchanged tense glances. The moment of reckoning had arrived. The night pressed down on the clearing like a living weight, the glow from the altar's runes casting an eerie, spectral light that made the surrounding trees appear as twisted sentinels watching their every move. The bones scattered about seemed to absorb the light, their jagged shapes twisting into grotesque shadows that flickered and danced in the torchT. Royce stood close to the altar, the black tooth pulsing rhythmically beneath his shirt, syncing with the heartbeat of the island itself. His fingers brushed the worn leather pouch, as if seeking answers hidden within its dark depths. The compass in his pocket thrummed faintly, its needle pointing unerringly into the shadowed forest beyond. A cold wind stirred suddenly, sweeping through the clearing and carrying with it a chorus of distant whispers, fragments of a song ancient and broken, echoing through the trees. The melody was both beautiful and sinister, weaving a tapestry of longing and dread that gripped their hearts. Eileen's voice cut through the murmuring night. We don't know what lies beyond this clearing, but whatever it is, it waits, and it's hungry. Bruno stepped forward, jaw clenched tight. We've come too far to turn back now. The island's secrets are within our grasp, but so is our doom. Lorik's younger brother trembled beside Royce, eyes wide and haunted. The voice that's inside me now, I can't tell if it's mine or the island's. Royce placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. Hold on to who you are. Don't let the island take that from you. Suddenly, a rustling sound erupted from the shadows at the edge of the clearing. The crew tensed, hands tightening on weapons as the darkness seemed to shift and writhe. From the forest's edge emerged figures, ghostly silhouettes, clad in tattered, sea-worn garments, their eyes hollow and glowing faintly with an unnatural light. They moved silently, their presence a chilling reminder of those claimed by the island's curse. Eileen raised her cutlass, voice steady but fierce. Stand ready. They're not the living, but they're deadly all the same. The figures advanced, encircling the camp with eerie grace. The torches flickered violently as a cold mist seeped from the forest floor, curling around their ankles like spectral serpents. Royce gritted his teeth, feeling the black tooth burn hot against his skin. The compass spun wildly, the needle erratic, as if warning of the chaos to come. Steel clashed against ethereal forms as the crew fought desperately, each strike meeting resistance as if cutting through smoke. The ghostly attackers seemed to phase through solid matter, their movements swift and unpredictable. Amid the chaos, Royce locked eyes with one figure, a woman whose gaze held a flicker of something lost and human beneath the haunting glow. In that instant, a flood of memories crashed over him, faces forgotten, promises broken, and a past intertwined with the island's dark magic. The woman's voice echoed inside his mind, soft yet commanding. The island's heart beats in. Your blood. The price is not yet paid. Royce staggered but steadied himself, gripping the black tooth tighter. The fight raged on, but in that moment he understood. This was more than a battle for survival. It was a struggle for their very souls. As dawn's first light began to pierce the gloom, the spectral attackers faded into the mists, leaving behind silence heavy with loss and unanswered questions. Eileen gathered the weary crew, her gaze hard and resolute. We've survived the night, but the island's grip tightens. Tomorrow we face the heart itself. Royce looked toward the dark woods, the black tooth burning fiercely now, a beacon of both hope and curse. The journey was far from over. The morning sun struggled to break through the dense canopy of the ancient forest, casting a timid golden glow over the moss-covered ground. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of wet earth mingled with salt and something metallic, a lingering trace of the island's restless past. Despite the fragile light, a heavy shadow clung to the trees and soil, as if the island itself held its breath, waiting for what was to come. The survivors of the Milkbone gathered silently in the clearing around the towering stone altar, where they had made camp the night before. Their bodies bore the scars of recent battles, cuts, bruises, and exhaustion etched deeply on their faces, but their eyes burned with a fierce determination. Each knew that beyond this moment lay the heart of the island, a place of terrible power and terrible secrets. Eileen stood before them, her posture straight and unyielding, a living monument to leadership forged in fire and loss. Her voice, steady and resolute, broke the tense silence. Today we go beyond everything we've known, beyond fear, beyond doubt. Today we face the heart of the island and whatever it hides. Royce adjusted the leather pouch tied securely at his waist, feeling the steady, warm pulse of the black tooth against his skin. The compass in his pocket no longer spun wildly, but pointed unwaveringly forward, as if guided by an invisible hand. A storm of thoughts churned in his mind, questions about the island, about his past, about the fate of those lost, but above all was a burning resolve to see this through. Path ahead was quiet now, the haunting calls of the night replaced by a heavy stillness that pressed against their senses. Shafts of sunlight filtered through gaps in the foliage, spotlighting patches of moss, ancient roots curling like skeletal fingers, and scattered bones half buried in the earth-grim reminders of past victims who had dared to seek the island's secrets. The trail wound upward, narrowing between gnarled trees and sharp rocks, twisting steeply toward the summit. The air grew thinner and colder, each breath a sharp intake that burned the lungs and tasted faintly of iron. Whispers seemed to drift on the breeze, not voices, exactly, but echoes of forgotten memories and warnings buried deep in the soil. Bruno's rough voice broke the silence, tinged with bitter irony. You'd think after all this we'd be used to the island's tricks, but it's like a living thing, always pulling us deeper, always testing us. Lorik's younger brother stayed close beside Royce, his small hand gripping his sleeve tightly. His eyes, wide and shadowed by fear, searched the older man's face for answers. Do you think we'll survive? Will the island let us leave? Royce crouched briefly, meeting the boy's gaze with steady warmth. If we hold together, trust each other, and face whatever comes without losing ourselves, ... maybe we will. The trail ended abruptly at the edge of a sheer cliff, a yawning cavern, mouth stretching wide beneath the island's summit. A faint blue light pulsed from within, casting ghostly reflections on jagged rock walls and shimmering across trickles of cold water that ran down like tears. Royce's heart thudded painfully as he stared into the abyss. The black tooth pulsed, hotter now, vibrating in his hand as if alive, mirroring the eerie light. Eileen turned to the crew, her voice low but commanding. This is the heart, what we've been searching for, and what might destroy us all. Tense glances passed between the crew members, faces pale, hands gripping weapons tighter. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Royce took a slow breath and stepped toward the cavern's mouth. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying a faint hum that resonated in his bones, like a voice speaking in a language older than time. Behind him, Eileen's voice broke the silence once more. Stay close. No matter what happens, don't lose each other. With a final glance back at the fragile daylight fading behind them, the crew entered the cavern, swallowed by shadows and the promise of forgotten horrors. The cavern's mouth yawned wide before them, swallowing the crew into a realm where light and shadow battled for dominion. Inside, the faint blue glow from unseen sources shimmered against slick stone walls, casting ghostly reflections that danced like restless spirits. The air was thick and cold, damp with moisture and something else, an ancient presence, Heavy and watchful Royce led the way, the black tooth burning warmly against his side, a beacon amid the creeping darkness. The compass needle quivered slightly, as if unsettled by what lay ahead. Each step echoed, a hollow sound swallowed almost immediately by the cavern's vastness. Behind him, Eileen's voice cut through the silence, firm and steady. "Keep alert. The island's heart isn't just a place, it's a test. One false move and it will claim us all." Bruno grunted, hefting his cutlass with a grim smile. "Test or no, I'm ready to fight whatever comes." Lorik's younger brother clung close to Royce, eyes wide, his breath visible in the cold air. "What do you think is waiting for us?" Royce swallowed, his throat tight. "Something old, something powerful, and probably angry." The passage narrowed suddenly, forcing the crew to squeeze through a tight corridor where the walls glistened with moisture. Strange runes, carved deep and worn smooth by time, pulsed faintly with the same blue light that suffused the cavern. Their shapes seemed to writhe, almost alive, shifting subtly as if watching their progress. A distant rumble echoed, low and ominous, vibrating through the rock beneath their feet. The ground trembled faintly, dust falling from the ceiling in. Tiny showers. Royce's grip tightened on the black tooth. The warmth flared sharply, sending a ripple of heat through his palm. Ahead, the corridor opened into a vast chamber. The air here hummed with raw energy, crackling with power that set the hair on their arms on end. At the center stood a monolithic stone ancient, carved with tangled symbols, glowing softly in the dim light. Around it, the remnants of shattered chains lay broken on the ground, and pools of dark liquid reflected the eerie glow. Eileen's step. Forward, voice hushed. The island's core. Whatever this is, it's alive, and it's waiting. Suddenly the chamber trembled violently. A deafening roar filled the cavern as the ground shook beneath their feet. Shadows writhed and twisted around the stone, forming shapes that flickered between solid and spectral. From the darkness emerged a towering figure, forged of shadow and flickering blue light. Its eyes blazed with ancient fury, and its voice echoed, in their minds, a terrible chorus of wrath and warning. "You who seek the heart shall pay the price," it intoned. "The island does not forgive trespassers." Steel was drawn in an instant, the crew bracing for the fight that would decide their fate. Royce stepped forward, clutching the black tooth tightly. "We didn't come here to beg for mercy. We came to end this." The battle for the island's heart had begun. The cavern's oppressive silence was a fragile veil stretched over a deep, rumbling heartbeat that vibrated through the rock beneath their feet. The dissipating shadows of the Guardian's defeat still lingered like fading echoes, but the island's pulse, slow, relentless, and ancient, thrummed steadily, promising that their trial was far from over. Royce stood motionless, the warmth of the black tooth at his side a steady comfort against the cold bite of the cavern air. Sweat trickled down his temple, mixing with the grime of battle, his lungs aching as his heart hammered in sync with the island's eerie rhythm. Around him, the crew gathered close, their faces pale and drawn, yet brightened by a spark of hard-earned resolve. The fight had been brutal, but survival was only the first step in a journey shadowed by secrets and sacrifice. Eileen's voice, calm but laced with steel, cut through the thick quiet. What we faced was merely the first sentinel, the island's shield, Beyond lies the heart itself, deeper, darker, and infinitely more dangerous. If we falter now, all will be lost. Bruno spat on the cold stone, wiping a trickle of blood from a fresh gash across his cheek. Worse than that creature? I don't know if my blood can handle more, but I swear I'll carve through anything that stands in our way. The pale, blue glow of the ancient runes pulsed softly along the cavern walls, casting eerie reflections that shimmered like ghosts dancing in the mist. Before them stretched a narrow tunnel, twisting downward into unfathomable darkness. The air that spilled from it was colder still, tinged with the sharp scent of salt and an indefinable metallic tang that stirred. Memories of storms and shipwrecks. Royce's fingers tightened instinctively around the leather pouch housing the black tooth. This passage leads straight to the island's core. There is no turning back. Their descent began cautiously, feet crunching on loose gravel as they navigated the winding path carved by time itself. The tunnel walls shimmered faintly with veins of crystalline stone, glowing with an otherworldly blue light that pulsed rhythmically like the heartbeat of the island itself. Whispers curled through the darkness, faint, unintelligible, yet impossible to ignore. The voices of the island's past, murmuring secrets and warnings in a language lost to time, reaching out to trespassers with both menace and allure. Loric's younger brother shivered beside Royce, clutching his arm like a lifeline. His wide eyes reflected both fear and a strange, otherworldly fascination. The voice, it's calling me. Louder now, deeper in my mind. Royce gave a firm nod, swallowing the cold knot of dread tightening his chest. We must stay strong. The island's heart will test not only our bodies, but our souls. At last, the tunnel opened into a vast subterranean chamber, the true heart of the island. The air here thrummed with raw, pulsating energy, thick enough to taste, electrifying, and heavy with promise and peril. The walls shimmered with veins of glowing crystal, jagged and irregular, emitting a soft, spectral blue light that cast ghostly shadows, making the chamber feel alive with ancient power. In the center of the chamber lay a colossal pool of dark, churning water. Its surface rippled with unseen currents, reflecting fractured, distorted images of the crew huddled around its edges. The island's heartbeat echoed through the chamber, a deep, resonant pulse that seemed to penetrate every bone, every breath, every thought. Eileen stepped forward, her gaze locked on the shifting waters. Her voice was a low whisper, almost reverent. This is it, the source, the island's soul itself. Whatever we do now will shape the fate of us all. Royce stared deep into the watery abyss, the black tooth burning fiercely against his side. 1,000 questions raced through his mind. What had created this place? What bound the island's power to this dark pool? And what terrible price would they pay to unravel its mysteries? The cavern seemed to close in around them, the air thickening with anticipation. The journey, brutal and relentless, was far from over. The greatest dangers and perhaps the greatest revelations still lay hidden beneath the waves. The chamber's dim blue light flickered as ripples danced across the surface of the vast, dark pool. The water seemed almost alive, its depths unfathomable, swallowing the faint glow like a ravenous beast. The air was thick with an electric charge, and the very walls seemed to pulse in time with the rhythmic beating of the island's hidden heart. Royce stepped closer to the edge, the warmth of the black tooth now a fierce blaze against his side, matching the growing intensity of the cavern. His breath caught as he gazed into the swirling depths, glimpsing fleeting images, ghostly faces, forgotten ships sinking into the abyss, shadows of lost souls trapped between worlds. Eileen's eyes narrowed, her hand resting on the hilt of her cutlass. This place, it's a prison, a heart forged by pain and sacrifice. The island feeds on those who dare trespass. Bruno's voice was low but laced with unease. And yet here we are, standing on the edge of it. What choice do we have? The whispers swelled, voices layered like a chorus of the damned, weaving. Promises of power and curses in a language that seemed to echo inside their very minds. The island was speaking, and it demanded a reckoning. Suddenly, the surface of the pool roiled violently, sending sprays of cold water onto the cavern floor. The reflections fractured, and from the depths emerged a massive shape, a creature forged of shadow and water, its form shifting and twisting like smoke caught in a storm. Its eyes burned with a cold, blue fire as it rose, towering over the crew like a specter of the deep. A low, rumbling growl echoed through the chamber, shaking the very stones beneath their feet. Royce drew his blade, feeling the black tooth pulse with fierce energy in his hand. "Prepare yourselves," he warned. "This is what guards the islands." So, the creature surged forward, water cascading from its limbs, tendrils of shadow curling and striking like serpents. The battle erupted in a tempest of steel and fury, each strike answered by the roar of the abyss. Amid the chaos, Royce felt the black tooth burn hotter than ever, a searing force that seemed to connect him to the island itself. Memories flooded, his mind faces of lost friends, the pain of betrayal, the taste of salt on the wind. The island's curse was entwined with his own fate, and only by embracing it could he hope to survive. Eileen fought fiercely beside him, her cutlass flashing like lightning as she parried and struck with deadly precision. Bruno roared a battle cry, hacking through the watery tendrils, while Lorik's younger brother watched wide-eyed from the shadows, trembling but unyielding. The fight stretched on, brutal and unrelenting. Each moment was a battle not just for their lives, but for their very souls. As the creature faltered, its form dissolving into shimmering droplets that scattered like mist, the chamber fell silent once more. The pool's surface stilled, reflecting the weary, bloodied faces of the survivors. Eileen sheathed her blade, her voice heavy with exhaustion and resolve. "We've won the fight, but the island's heart still beats. Our journey is not over." Royce nodded, the black tooth now cool but still pulsing faintly. "We've glimpsed the island's soul, but to truly understand, we must face what lies beneath." The crew exchanged tense glances, knowing that the deepest secrets and the greatest dangers were still to come. The damp air of the cavern hung heavy around them, thick with the residue of battle and the weight of ancient secrets. The crew of the Milkbone stood in solemn silence beside the great, dark pool that dominated the chamber's heart, their bodies aching and soaked, but their spirits far from broken. The faint glow from veins of luminescent crystal pulsed gently along the cavern walls, casting wavering blue shadows that danced like restless spirits in the cold, still air. Royce, his chest rising and falling with measured breaths, stood at the edge of the water, his fingers unconsciously curling around the smooth surface of the black tooth tucked at his side. The warmth radiating from it contrasted with the chilling dampness of the cavern, a small but steady beacon of hope and connection amid the encroaching darkness. The compass in his pocket remained fixed, its needle unwavering, pointing toward the unknown depths beneath the pool's surface, the path they were destined to follow. Around him, the faces of his crew were etched with exhaustion and grim determination. Eileen's eyes scanned the chamber with sharp clarity, her usual resolve tempered with a hint of reverence for the power they were about to confront. Bruno flexed his bruised knuckles, muttering curses under his breath, but ready. Nonetheless, even Lorik's younger brother, pale and trembling, showed a spark of courage in the face of overwhelming fear. Eileen's voice broke the heavy silence. The battle we fought was but a gatekeeper's trial. This pool is more than water. It is a portal, a gateway to the island's very core. To find the truth, we must dive beneath the surface and face whatever dwells below. Bruno spat to the side, wiping blood from his lip. I don't care what waits down there. We've come this far, and I'm not turning back now. The crew set to work, gathering ropes, fashioning breath-holding aids from soaked cloth and herbs, and steadying themselves against the cold, creeping chill. The tension in the air was palpable. The moment to confront the island's heart was upon them. Royce inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of the black tooth's steady heat pressing against his ribs. We don't know what's down there, he said quietly, but we face it together. He stepped forward, letting his hand graze the surface of the pool. The water was colder than he anticipated, sharp and biting, but it pulsed beneath his touch, alive with a rhythm that echoed. The very heartbeat of the island. Without hesitation, Royce took a deep breath and plunged beneath the water. The world transformed instantly. The oppressive darkness of the cavern above gave way to an ethereal, liquid expanse where light bent and shimmered in impossible ways. Colors shifted and twisted, hues blooming in slow motion and fading like ghosts. The water was startlingly clear, yet seemed charged with a strange magic that distorted reality itself. Royce's lungs burned, but he pushed onward, propelled by a mixture of fear and fierce determination. The walls of the underwater cavern opened before him like the maw of a forgotten beast. Jagged crystal formations jutted out like frozen lightning, refracting the faint light into dazzling patterns that danced around him. Strange sea creatures, their bodies glowing faintly in bioluminescent blues and greens, glided silently through the water. Their eyes held an ancient intelligence, watching him pass with curious caution. In the distance, a soft blue light pulsed steadily, the same rhythm as the black tooth's warmth. Royce kicked harder, following the beacon deeper into the abyss. The cavern opened into a massive, cathedral-like chamber beneath the waves. At its center lay a colossal relic, an enormous mechanism of ancient design, encrusted with coral and wrapped in swaying seaweed. Massive gears, pipes, and wheels interlocked in impossible configurations, their surfaces scarred by time but still faintly humming with latent power. The relic was a monument to a forgotten era, carved with intricate scenes, shipwrecks swallowed by storms, men shackled in chains, and titanic waves crashing against the island's jagged cliffs. The images seemed almost alive, their stories etched into the very metal. whispering of curses and sacrifice, hope and despair. Royce reached out, fingertips brushing the cold, barnacle-encrusted surface. The black tooth flared fiercely, flooding his mind with visions, memories of the island's past, of souls lost to its wrath, of promises broken and bonds forged in fire and blood. Above, bubbles rose steadily, marking Royce's slow ascent back toward the surface. The island's heart was no mere pool or stone. It was a living enigma, wrapped in layers of mystery and sorrow, waiting to reveal its darkest truths. Breaking through the water's surface, Royce gasped for air, the chill replaced by the musty warmth of the cavern once more. The crew's anxious faces greeted him, their eyes wide with anticipation. Eileen stepped forward, voice steady but heavy with unspoken fears. "What you saw down there, it changes everything. The island's curse isn't just a legend. It's a legacy, one we are now a part of." Royce nodded, the black tooth's warmth pulsing softly against his side. "And if we're to survive, to break that legacy, we have to go deeper, into the island's very soul." The air within the underwater cavern thickened, heavy with the residue of ancient magic and whispered secrets long buried beneath the waves. As Royce resurfaced, gasping for the sharp, cold air, his heart pounded not from exertion, but from the weight of revelation pressing down upon him. The black tooth burned fiercely in his hand, a searing beacon that tethered him to the island's living core and pulsing curse. Around him, the crew's faces were etched with exhaustion and grim resolve, eyes wide and unblinking as they awaited what the depths had revealed. The silence between them was thick, broken only by the distant drip of water and the faint, rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo from the very earth beneath their feet. "We cannot stop here," Royce said, his voice low but unwavering. "The island is alive, its heart beating in time with ours. This pulse is not just a rhythm, it is a challenge, a call that demands we answer." Eileen nodded, though a shadow of doubt flickered in her gaze. "The path ahead only grows darker. I can feel the island's resistance building, as if the earth itself conspires against us. But to turn back now is to be lost, forever trapped within its grasp." Bruno cracked his knuckles, the fresh bruises and cuts on his hands testament to their recent battle. "If the island has more trials for us, then so be it. We'll face them all or die trying." Gathering their gear with renewed purpose, the crew prepared to descend further not into water, but down a narrow stone tunnel that wound deep beneath the island's surface. The walls were etched with ancient symbols, faintly glowing with a spectral blue light, their twisted shapes telling tales of curses, sacrifices, and long-forgotten power. Royce traced the carvings with his eyes, feeling the weight of history pressing in. The whispers of the past teased his mind, voices lost to time, but now stirring once more. The island was speaking, and they were being drawn deeper into its secrets. Suddenly, a low, vibrating sound filled the tunnel, a deep, rhythmic thrum like the beating of a colossal heart, resonating from the island's core. "It's the island, speaking to us," whispered Lorik's younger brother, clutching Royce's arm tightly, "calling us onward." The tunnel opened abruptly into a vast chamber, illuminated by a pulsating light, emanating from a central artifact, a massive altar, crafted from polished obsidian and aged marble, its surface intricately inlaid with gold and inscribed with elaborate, curling runes. The altar was fractured, covered in a delicate web of cracks, as if barely containing the terrible power sealed within. Royce stepped closer, drawn by the warmth radiating from the ancient stone. The black tooth in his hand thrummed wildly, beating. In sync with the pulsing light, this is the island's heart, he breathed, the source of its power and its curse. Eileen leaned in, fingertips brushing the cold carved runes. Her eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. The key to unlocking the island's mystery was at their fingertips. Then the ground trembled beneath their feet, a sudden quake shaking loose dust and debris from the cavern ceiling. The chamber dimmed, briefly as a veil of shadows spread like a tide. Tension snapped tight among the crew, an unspoken warning that the island was awakening, ready to unleash its wrath upon those who dared trespass. But Royce stood firm. Clenching his jaw, he reached out and placed the black tooth upon the altar. A surge of raw energy exploded from the stone, flooding the chamber with blinding light and sending visions crashing into his mind, echoes of pain and sacrifice, of bonds forged and broken, and of hope flickering stubbornly against the darkness. Island was speaking, and now they were ready to answer. The radiant glow from the ancient altar slowly dimmed, leaving the cavern shrouded in a haunting twilight, where shadows stretched long and deep along the walls. The air itself seemed charged with an unseen force, an electric hum vibrating beneath their skin and mingling with a distant drip of water echoing from unseen crevices. The very stones around them pulsed faintly with the island's heartbeat, a slow, relentless rhythm that spoke of centuries of untold secrets, forgotten rites, and restless souls. The crew of the Milkbone stood gathered in uneasy silence, the weight of what they had just witnessed settling over them like a suffocating cloak. Their faces, smeared with grime and streaked with salt water, bore the traces of exhaustion, but their eyes burned with a mixture of awe, dread, and an unyielding determination to press onward. Royce, fingers trembling slightly, clenched the black tooth tightly in his palm. Its warmth radiated deep into his bones, a tether to the island's living core, a bond both blessing and curse. His gaze swept slowly over the fractured altar, its obsidian surface etched with intricate, curling runes that seemed to writhe and shift when viewed from the corner of his eye, like ancient serpents guarding secrets no mortal should know. Eileen stepped forward, her voice cutting through the heavy silence with a sharp edge of urgency and resolve. What we unleashed was not merely power, it was the island's binding curse. This force predates any of us, older than the very rocks beneath our feet. It is woven into the fabric of this place, inescapable and eternal. We are bound to it now, whether by choice or by fate. Bruno, usually the loudest and boldest, swallowed his usual bravado beneath the weight of the moment. His eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. So, what happens now? Are we doomed to become part of that curse? To wander these ruins forever, lost to time and madness? Royce's breath hitched, his voice low but steady. I don't know, but I do know one thing: running won't save us. The curse is a chain around our necks now. If we want to survive, if we want to break free, we must understand it. We must unravel its origins. The runes on the altar pulsed softly, a rhythm syncing with the black tooth's warmth. They seemed alive, ancient words weaving themselves through Royce's mind like ghostly tendrils, filling his thoughts with flickering images, faces twisted in agony and desperation, lost sailors screaming into storms, shadowed rituals performed. Beneath blood-red moons, and whispers of pacts forged with something dark and unknowable. Royce turned to Eileen, his voice barely above a whisper. These markings, they speak of a covenant, a promise sealed centuries ago between the island's first inhabitants and a force beyond mortal comprehension. Eileen nodded solemnly, eyes darkening. A pact that cursed the island and its people, a binding promise twisted into a prison for souls, trapping them, corrupting fate itself. Around them, the crew exchanged uneasy glances. Each of them felt the invisible chains tightening, a growing weight of responsibility, of impending doom. The island's tragic legacy was now theirs to carry. Royce stepped closer to the altar, fingertips tracing the cold, jagged carvings. With reverence and fear, his voice was a soft murmur, laden with resolve. If the curse is a binding promise, there must be a way to undo it, to find the original terms, what was given, what was taken in return. We need to uncover the truth. Buried here, Bruno spat on the cavern floor, frustration flashing in his eyes. Easier said than done. Where do we even begin? This place is a maze of death and madness. Royce's eyes locked onto Eileen's. We begin here. This altar is the key. Whatever knowledge it holds, it's up to us to unlock it. To read the story the island is trying to tell. As if summoned by their determination, a faint rumble shook the cavern, dust cascading from the ceiling like a soft rain. The island stirred once again, a living beast awakening from slumber, reminding them that time was short and the curse was far from dormant. The black tooth pulsed steadily against Royce's side, a heartbeat echoing through the stillness. He took a deep breath, the cold, damp air filling his lungs, and stepped forward, ready to delve deeper into the island's dark heart, to face whatever horrors and revelations awaited them in the shadows. The cavern seemed to breathe around them, the shadows deepening as the faint glow from the altar faded to a soft pulse, like a heartbeat slowing in the dusk. The air thickened with a heavy silence, broken only by the distant drip of water and the subtle rustle of the crew's movements. Each man and woman was caught in their own thoughts, the weight of the island's legacy pressing on their souls with a relentless grip. Royce's eyes never left the fractured altar, where the ancient runes now seemed to shimmer with a quiet, sinister life. The black tooth in his hand pulsed rhythmically, its warmth a stark contrast to the cold stone beneath his fingers. It was as if the tooth was alive, a living fragment of the island's very essence, binding him ever tighter to the cursed land. Eileen stepped forward, voice low and steady, but tinged with urgency. This curse ... it's a chain forged in desperation. The island's first people made a bargain with a power beyond our world, a force that demanded sacrifice and loyalty in exchange for protection and prosperity. Bruno's jaw tightened, and when the bargain turned dark, the island became a prison. Souls trapped, generations chained to a fate they never chose. The younger brother of Lorik swallowed hard, his eyes haunted. Are we to become the next victims, the next souls bound to this place? Royce shook his head slowly, a flicker of fierce determination lighting his gaze. No, we are not doomed. This curse can be broken, but only if we find the terms of the original pact. Only if we understand what was promised and what price was paid. The crew began to move, their footsteps echoing softly as they circled the altar, examining the carvings and inscriptions. The language was ancient, foreign, yet somehow familiar, as if it resonated deep within their memories. Royce traced the curling lines with his fingers, feeling the vibrations of magic and history intertwining. His mind filled with fragmented visions, storm-tossed ships shattered against jagged rocks, ritual fires burning under blood-red moons, shadowed figures whispering oaths that sealed fates long ago. Eileen pointed to a specific section of the carvings, her finger trembling slightly. Here, this part speaks of the sealing bond, a sacred vow made in blood and spirit, meant to protect the island, but now binding all who set foot upon it. Bruno leaned closer, voice rough with disbelief. Sounds like a death sentence. Royce nodded. It does. But it also hints at a way to undo it, a ritual lost to time, hidden somewhere within the island's depths. A low rumble shook the cavern once more, dust falling like whispered warnings from above. The island stirred restlessly, a slumbering giant awakened by their intrusion. Royce met Eileen's gaze. We don't have time to hesitate. Every moment we linger, the curse tightens its grip. We must find that ritual, and fast. The crew readied themselves, the flickering torchlight, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts along the walls. The altar's pulse slowed to a faint throb, but the black tooth in Royce's hand burned brighter than ever, guiding them forward like a living compass. With a final glance around the cavern, the silent witness to centuries of pain and sacrifice. Royce stepped away from the altar. Each step echoed with purpose, determination, and a growing sense of destiny. The island had spoken. Now it was time to answer. The air grew heavier as the crew pressed deeper into the island's shadowed core, the faint glow from their torches flickering against the damp, jagged walls. Every footstep echoed with a solemnity that felt almost sacred, as if they were walking through the bones of the past, treading on memories long buried beneath layers of stone and sorrow. The scent of earth and salt mixed in the air, thick and intoxicating, carrying with it a faint metallic tang that hinted at forgotten bloodshed. Royce led the way, the black tooth hanging heavily at his side, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat in the stillness. The compass, now warped and almost useless, had long ceased pointing true. Here, deep within the island's hidden sanctum, it seemed that no earthly force could guide them except sheer will and determination. Behind him, Eileen's eyes flickered with a mixture of caution and resolve. Bruno's broad frame moved silently, but with purposeful strength, every muscle taut with readiness. Lorik's younger brother stumbled occasionally, but never faltered, driven by a fierce, silent courage. The cavern opened suddenly into a vast chamber unlike any they had yet seen. Stalactites hung like icicles from the high ceiling, dripping steadily into a shallow, crystalline pool that stretched across the floor like a mirror to some otherworldly realm. The water shimmered with an ethereal light, shifting through hues of deep sapphire, emerald and violet, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the walls. At the chamber's center stood an enormous, ancient tree, its twisted roots sprawled in every direction, digging deep into the island's heart. Its bark was blackened and cracked, yet veins of glowing blue light pulsed beneath the surface, as though the tree itself was alive and breathing, a living conduit between earth and sky, life and death. Royce stepped forward, awe and trepidation mingling in his chest. This must be the heart of the island. Eileen nodded slowly. The source of the curse, the wellspring of its power. If we can confront this, maybe we can finally break the chains. The roots of the tree seemed to pulse in rhythm with the black tooth's warmth, a silent song of ancient magic and sacrifice. Royce reached out tentatively, brushing his hand along the gnarled bark, feeling a low hum of energy surge through him, raw, wild, and utterly alien. Suddenly, the water in the pool stirred violently, ripples cascading outward like the beating of a great heart. From beneath the shimmering surface, shapes began to emerge, spectral figures cloaked in mist and shadow, their faces blurred, but their eyes burning with a sorrowful intensity. Bruno stepped back, hand on his cutlass. Ghosts, spirits bound. To this place, Eileen's voice was barely a whisper. Not just ghosts. They're the island's lost souls, caught in the curse, desperate for release. The spectral forms drifted closer, their mournful whispers filling the cavern like a haunting melody. Royce felt their sorrow wash over him, a tidal wave of pain and longing that threatened to overwhelm his senses. But beneath the despair, he sensed something else, a flicker of hope, a yearning for redemption. "We must listen," Royce said firmly. "Only by understanding their story can we hope to free them." The ghosts' voices rose in a chorus, weaving a tapestry of ancient history, betrayal, and sacrifice, a tale etched into the island's very core, waiting for those brave enough to hear. The whispers of the lost souls wove through the cavern. Like a sorrowful wind, their ethereal voices rising and falling in a mournful symphony. Each word carried the weight of centuries' tales of hope shattered, bonds broken, and sacrifices made in the shadow of the island's curse. Royce stood still, heart pounding, as the spectral forms circled the ancient tree, their faces flickering between despair and longing. The island's curse was born of desperation, Royce murmured, his voice barely audible over the ghostly chorus. A pact sealed in blood and fire to protect the land, but at a terrible cost. Eileen stepped beside him, her eyes reflecting the pale glow of the spirits. The original inhabitants sought power to defend their home against invaders, but the price was the binding of their souls and those of all who followed. They became prisoners of their own making. Bruno gritted his teeth. And we've been dragged into their nightmare. The largest of the spirits, a figure clad in tattered robes, extended a translucent hand toward Royce. The black tooth flared, resonating with a piercing light as if acknowledging a shared bond. Memories flooded Royce's mind, visions of the island's past, of a leader who had made the fateful pact, and the anguish that followed. In that moment, Royce understood. The curse could only be broken by a willing sacrifice, an act of redemption, strong enough to sever the chains binding the island and its souls. "We must choose," Royce said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "One of us must offer themselves to the island to undo the curse from within." Eileen's breath caught. "Are you saying?" Royce nodded slowly. "Yes, the bond is tied to this island's heart. Only by merging with it, by offering oneself willingly, can the cycle end." The crew's faces hardened with resolve. Bruno slammed a fist into his palm. "If that's what it takes to free us all, then I'm ready." Lorik's younger brother swallowed, stepping forward with a tremble. I will do what I must." Eileen's Gaze met Royce's, fierce and unwavering. We all must be ready. The island demands a price, and we must pay it to live. Royce turned back to the ancient tree, feeling its pulse throb beneath his fingertips. The black tooth burned fiercely, a beacon of hope and despair intertwined. Closing his eyes, he reached deep within himself, drawing strength from the memories of those lost souls and the future yet to be claimed. With a steady breath, he pressed the tooth into the bark, sealing his fate. A brilliant light erupted from the tree, engulfing the chamber in radiant energy. The spirits lifted, their faces transforming from anguish to peace as the island's curse unraveled like threads of smoke. Royce felt his body dissolve into light and shadow, becoming one with the island's heart, the pain and hope of generations flowing through him. His final thoughts were of his crew, free at last to leave the island's grasp. When the light faded, the chamber was silent. The ancient tree stood renewed, its bark glowing softly with a tranquil blue hue. The black tooth rested where Royce had placed it, cool and still. Outside, the Milkbone's crew gathered at the shore, watching as the island seemed to breathe easier, its oppressive weight lifted. Eileen whispered, "He saved us all." Bruno nodded, a rare softness in his eyes. He broke the curse. The island was free. The wind carried a faint, distant song, the echo of a life reclaimed, a legacy redeemed, and a story finally told.